Hello. I wanted to record a video about a recent diagnosis that I've been given, and that diagnosis is ADHD. Now, this is massively misunderstood in society, and I was one of these people that massively misunderstood it. We always think of people with ADHD as that naughty kid in school that's always really late, really disorganised, doesn't hand their homework in on time, really crazy and annoying. And don't get me wrong, I was definitely crazy and annoying in school. However, I was also ridiculously organised with my homework. Like, I did hand my homework in on time, as long as I was motivated to do it. And I didn't turn up late to class, and I wasn't one of those students. And I think it's just massively misunderstood because people always think of it as a childhood diagnosis, whereas actually there are so many adults that are walking about in society not knowing that they've actually got this condition. It is a neurological condition. My brain works differently than the majority of people that are walking on this earth, and I spent the last few months kind of getting my head around this diagnosis, but also really trying to gain a deeper and more accurate understanding on what ADHD is. And essentially in this video I want to explain to you my experience of being undiagnosed, then being diagnosed, and then everything that came with that, and also what I'm planning to do about it, what I'm going to do from now on in my life to hopefully not let this impact on my quality of life, because a lot of things were being impacted and I didn't know why, and now I'm starting to get that understanding. So hopefully this is helpful for anyone that wants to learn more about this condition, or maybe you've just been diagnosed, or maybe you think you have ADHD, and hopefully this is helpful for you too. So I should probably mention that I'm not a doctor. I am a qualified paediatric nurse. However, you don't really get taught about ADHD in your nursing training, which I think is a bit weird. But I have done my own research and I have spoken to quite a few doctors about it. And essentially, ADHD, which you probably know, stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Now, that in itself may be a little bit misleading, because yes, you can either have reduced attention span and or a hyperactivity, impulsive behaviours. And I have both. This was diagnosed to me via a questionnaire and then a 3-hour-long assessment where I had to delve into my childhood, my relationships, loads and loads of different aspects of my life. And at the end of it, she kind of went off and was like, I'm just going to go and discuss this with my colleague and then I'll come back and let you know. So she went off and I was sat there like, I don't have ADHD. Like, I'm not like that image that I imagine ADHD people to be like. And then she came back and she was like, yeah, you've got mild to moderate ADHD. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, I didn't understand what this box that I was being put into actually meant. So that's kind of why I've done quite a lot of research into it. And essentially, the easiest way of explaining it, in my brain anyway, is that in your brain you have lots of different neurotransmitters, and these are basically messages that are being sent throughout your brain. And there are obviously lots of different parts of your brain that are involved in lots of different functions that you can do on an everyday basis. And there are 3 of these neurotransmitters that are very important, and these are 3 that are impacted by ADHD. So you've got dopamine, you've got serotonin, and you've got norepinephrine. And these transmitters are basically fired when you're wanting to do different things, whether that's focus on a task or whether you get excited, or, lots and lots of different things, memory. And when you've got ADHD, the firings of those neurotransmitters are normal. However, they're not received as much as they should be. And there are lots of different drugs that you can take that will increase the receptivity, if you like, of these neurotransmitters, and that's definitely something that I'm looking into. But essentially, my brain cannot focus on things that I am not interested in, which comes with a wealth of problems in my life, like coming across as uninterested, or coming across as rude, or physically not knowing that I've got loads of stuff to do in that day, but physically not being able to get up and start doing it. And I always used to tell myself, you're lazy, you're not being productive today, literally used to beat myself up about these things. But and I still have to hold some accountability for that, right? Like, if I'm sat on the sofa knowing that I need to put a washing load in, how hard is it to get off the sofa and go and do that? Everyone experiences that, but no, it's actually different. And this is what can really irritate me sometimes, when people are like, oh, everyone forgets things, or everyone can't get off the sofa to go and put a washing load in, or whatever it is. My brain physically doesn't receive the messages. Like, it's actually mad when you think about it. See, I've already lost my train of thought, and this is one of those things that happens. I was explaining all of the different ways that ADHD impacts my life, and I got to one and I went off on this tangent about washing, and now I don't know where I was. So I'm going to take a second and I'll come back. So on the flip side of that, you also have something called hyperfocusing, and this is where like 100% of your brain is focused on a task. No matter what else you've got going on your day, you're like proper blinkered to that finish line. So for example, sometimes I discover something which really interests me, and I literally spend hours on the computer looking into this subject. I don't eat, I don't go to the toilet, I don't drink, and I literally, before I know it, 7 hours have passed, and I know everything about this subject. I'm like super clued up, but I'm like, I think I need the loo. And then I go to the loo, and obviously like I really needed the loo, or like TMI, but it's just odd. And then I can like be super productive. So like at work, for example, if I'm working with a client that, you know, we've got a really good relationship and I really want them to be really happy and I'm super interested in what I'm doing for them, I will smash out like 4 days of work in one day, and my boss will be like, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. And then other days, like I can't focus. So it's really up and down. When I'm talking about clients there, by the way, I'm actually in sales now. I'm not talking about my patients as a nurse, because obviously that would be really bad if I was like, I've never had bronchiolitis before, so I'm not going to concentrate on making you better. But I've had a broken arm, so I'll come and fix you. But I suppose this is something that's affected me since childhood, and I just never knew that I had it. And there's a lot of stigma around it. And when I think of someone with ADHD, I think of an annoying person, basically. And I think sometimes it's about finding your people. It's about finding people that love you for who you are. And as cringy as that sounds, that really is it. Like, I used to surround myself with people who didn't love me for who I was, would manipulate me, because I'm quite naive, and I admit that. I am a naive person. I do take people at face value, and that can be seen as someone that you can easily take advantage of. And looking back on my life, I can't count on two hands the amount of people that have done that. I think I'd need about 10 hands. But life with undiagnosed ADHD is hard, especially as a female. You're so good at masking your emotions, you're so good at pretending and mirroring to be like everyone else in society that no one would ever think you had ADHD. I was tested for autism as well. When I first listed out all of these symptoms that I thought were the root cause of lots of problems in my life, I went to my GP and I said, this, by the way, this GP knew me so well. I went to her like once, twice a week for years. I was really, really unwell at the time. And I remember taking her this list of symptoms and being like, do you think that I should be tested for autism and ADHD? And she was like, yes. And I was like, I genuinely thought you were just going to brush that off and be like, don't be so stupid. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I actually need to look into this, but I'm sure I won't have it, it'll be fine. And then I got referred, then I had it, and then obviously didn't have autism, but was quickly progressed to an ADHD assessment and obviously was diagnosed. So I've actually just gone and found this list of symptoms, and just to give you an idea, it's a lot. But I thought maybe I could quickly run through these, and if any of these ring true for you, obviously you have to have a certain amount, but there's a lot. So for example, all or nothing. I am a very all or nothing person. If I'm going to do something, I either don't or I do it within an inch of its life. I really struggle with like the grey areas in life. So in my brain, it's like it's a yes or it's a no. I'm extremely honest, like sometimes to my own detriment. I have very high expectations for absolutely everything, and then when I find myself falling short of those high expectations, I beat myself up about it. And that's because you've got the firing in your brain of what you want to do and what you're going to do. And, you know, at the beginning of my day, I'm like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Or normally the night before. And then I wake up and I'm like, I can't get out of bed. Can't do it. I don't understand sarcasm, never have. Many people have tried to teach me. Shout out if you're one of those people, but I've never got it. I find it very hard to put myself in someone else's shoes unless I've been there before. So either physical pain or, you know, it's easy to imagine. So what I mean by this is, if someone's telling me a story about something that's happened and the way that they feel, I'll often respond by explaining a similar situation that I've been in, where I've felt what I can imagine them to have felt like in that situation. And quite often people would be like, we're talking about me, why are you talking about your experiences? But that is literally how someone with ADHD empathises. And obviously I'm a nurse, I'm a paediatric nurse, and I'm a very compassionate one, but it's just difficult for me to be able to imagine how someone else feels if I haven't felt it. It's very odd. Need reassurance until I have 100% trust. I find it very hard to give someone the benefit of the doubt. So I take people at face value, but if I don't have evidence, like if their actions and their words are different, I find it quite difficult to be like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure they're being honest. I find that quite difficult. I often find it hard to concentrate on what other people are saying. This is so funny because there's literally been so many times in my life, like weekly occurrence, someone will be talking to me and I will hear the words that they're saying, but I won't actually process their meaning. So sometimes someone will say to me like, oh, the squirrel's just gone up the tree. I mean, obviously this is a ridiculous example, but welcome to my brain. The squirrel's just gone up the tree. And I'll hear the words, the squirrel's gone up the tree. And often I have to repeat it back to them and be like, the squirrel's just gone up the tree. And then I'm like, oh, right, has it? And then I understand it. It's actually ludicrous when I think about it. I often observe things that others don't see. So like links between things. So I'm like, that actor's just changed their t-shirt between this scene and the scene before, and it's meant to be in the same place on the same day. And the person I'm watching TV will be like, what? And I'll like rewind it and play it and it will be true, or things like that. I always need subtitles when I'm watching TV because I find it a lot easier to focus. Otherwise the words just escape me, whereas if the subtitles are there, I've got a visual cue as well as an auditory one. And also if my brain's like a second behind, I can quickly read it before it disappears and then I'm caught up. And my boyfriend gets really annoyed with me because if I don't have subtitles, I'm like constantly rewinding because I like missed a scene or something because my brain's just like do, 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 do. I'm just gonna pick one out of here because otherwise I'm gonna be nattering on for ages. So I have a lot of sensory stuff going on. Like if I'm in an environment where it's like super messy or like super loud or like loads of lights, like I'm either stimulated by it and I'm getting that dopamine and I'm like, this is great, let's go. Or I'm like, I can't handle it, like it's too much for me. And sometimes I have to like leave places, and sometimes I have to just end conversations if a conversation is getting too emotionally draining and I'm finding it like I don't have the motivation to go into detail about how I'm feeling in that moment, that I have to say, like this happens with my boyfriend as well, I have to say like I can't do this right now, can we talk about this another time? And there's a lot of leniency there because it is really difficult. But I think hopefully that was helpful, just kind of going through some of my symptoms in everyday life. It's actually a bit weird looking back on that. And some of these symptoms aren't necessarily related to ADHD, but this is what I went to my GP with, and this is when my GP referred me for autism and ADHD testing. And that's kind of where I've ended up today. So let's talk a little bit about post-diagnosis, right? So I left that call being like, oh my God, this is mental. Researched, watched a lot of videos of other people's experiences, and I was like, that's not me. But this is the thing. You don't have to have every symptom to be diagnosed with ADHD, and some symptoms you will not associate with, and others you'll be like, that's me. And you might not have ADHD, but you associate with some of these symptoms. Like, that's totally normal. And you have to kind of hit a number of, or tick a number of boxes, I guess, in order to be officially diagnosed. But so I walked away and I did all of that research. And annoyingly, I'd actually moved from Bristol to Surrey. So they weren't able to help me, the Bristol team. They basically said I had to transfer over to the Surrey team, which made things really complicated. So I signed up with a new GP. I went and I said, I've got this diagnosis. I waited 3.5 years for this diagnosis, for the assessment. Please, can you put me on some medication, or can we discuss what options I have? And the GP said, well, I can't prescribe the medications, even though the assessor had told me that they could. I can't prescribe the medications. You're going to have to be referred to the ADHD team in Surrey. Okay, referred me to them, waited weeks and weeks and weeks, heard back from them saying that there was a 2.5 year waiting list. I was like, hang on. I've been diagnosed, I waited for years and years to get my diagnosis, and now I have to wait another 2.5 years to do something with it. So I was kind of stuck in this limbo, and it was horrible. But they did say that my GP could prescribe the medication if they felt comfortable, and lots of people are doing this and being put on medication whilst they're waiting for their official specialist review. So I went back to my GP. He was like, don't feel comfortable in doing that, which is fair enough. Like, I get that. He's accountable for what medications he prescribes, and if he's not trained in that specific medication, then I get that. And I went back to the ADHD team and said this, and they said, right, would a telephone consultation with an ADHD consultant help? So I went back to my GP, organised that call. That took weeks, months. And he finally had the call the other day, and he called me up and he said, right, I've had a call with the ADHD consultant and I'm happy to start you on this medication. I was like, okay, amazing. Like, I'm going to try it and see what it's like, because this is now impacting my life in so many different ways I can't even explain to you. And it's a controlled drug, right? It's basically a methamphetamine. Like, giving a stimulant to a person with a hyperactivity disorder seems really counterintuitive. Like, it just seems mad. But what it is they're hyperactive because obviously more's being fired, but they're not always being received. And so that's kind of how the pathophysiology of the drug works. But so now, on Thursday, it's now Tuesday, on Thursday I'm going to the nurse and I have to have my height, my weight, my blood pressure, an ECG, my pulse, all of these baseline observations taken. And then I am going to get put on this drug the following week. And I'm going to try it, and I'm going to see what it's like. And I'll keep you updated. I don't even know if I'm going to post this, but if you're watching this, then obviously I have posted it. And I might film myself on the drug, just so you can see like exactly what I'm like, because I'm really excited, but I'm also really nervous. And I'm not going to do it on my own. I'm going to probably go to my parents, or my parents will come here and just be there for support. Since my diagnosis, they've been super understanding. I haven't like outwardly told my whole family yet, but obviously I need to if I'm going to post this, but some of my family knows. Maybe I'll just take the drug and rock up to my next family event, and then we'll be like, you seem different. And I'm like, well, I have loads of stuff that I could talk about. Like, obviously I've been on this mental health journey in the last few years, but I don't want to ramble. I want this to be quite informative, so I will keep you updated with how I get on.